Welcome to Silver Creek Church Online, and thank you so much for joining us. And if you've been watching online or if you're new to joining us online, we would love to see you in person. We meet here in Bertrand, Michigan at 10 a.m. on Sundays. The address is on the bottom of the screen. Today, we're starting a brand new series titled Prodigal. It's a three-part series led by Pastor Matt. Let's join them now for service.
Well, good morning again. So glad to have you all with us today. Man, today we're diving into the prodigal. And this is probably one of my favorite parables found within the Bible. Sure, I got that turned on good. It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible because it's got more than one takeaway from it. What people don't realize oftentimes is that when Jesus told parables, they were layered. They were layered on purpose so that different walks of life that people come from, different situations, people can take something away from it that applies to them. And Jesus told parables so that multiple people with multiple perspectives could learn something from that story. And most people, I think, the most common interpretation of the parable we're going to look at of the prodigal son, people see the lost one, right? The restless child, the one who, the grass is greener, and so they want to go out and live life to the fullest. And so it's like almost some of us take away a cautionary tale. Be careful, going for all the things you think that'll make you happy, because it won't. In the end, you'll end up running out of money, you'll hit rock bottom, and then you'll want to go back home to your father. That, it really is better than you think back home. And if you're lucky enough to have an amazing super dad like the one in the story, not only will he say, all right, come on back, you old rascal. No, instead of just that, he'll be like, son, daughter, and run to you and put their arms around you and treat you as if nothing happened at all. And so the takeaway oftentimes is God is there as a parallel. God, our Father, is in heaven waiting to take us all back. No matter how much wrong we've done, it's okay, you're forgiven. And that's probably the most common takeaway, but that's not the only thing to learn from the story as we're about to find in this series. The prodigal story has three main characters. It has the father, it has the youngest son, and it has an oldest son. The three characters. And each character adds different details of what happened. If you interviewed, just like an eyewitness after an event, if you interview different people will give you a little bit different perspective or how they saw it from where they were standing of the story. And I don't know, that happens in my family. I don't know about yours. But like when I'm at family gatherings with my siblings, I'll be telling a story about something that happened. You're like, oh, I remember when this happened. And I'll be halfway through telling it. My older sister or my older brother will be like, okay, you're leaving out one of the biggest details, Matt. Or don't you remember, you're kind of missing here's what really happened. Or no, this is what, and people laugh and we kind of get going, because, oh yeah, okay. And people see it with different perspectives. And perspectives are important because with each person's perspective, we gain truth. We gain the absolute truth. Absolute truth is found by listening to each other. Absolute truth is found by saying, okay, how did you see it? And then you're like, oh, okay, I never saw it that way, or I didn't think about that. And it helps you out. It fills in the missing facts, and it completes the picture. And I'm a big movie fan, as many of you know. I talk about it all the time. I love movies, and I love movies that tell the story from each character's perspective. It's like the movie will be playing, and you'll see it, and then all of a sudden it'll stop and go back and retell it again, but from a different character's perspective. And whoa, the movie takes a twist and a turn at that point. And that style of movie making is called the Rashomon effect. And the Rashomon effect is a term used to describe how a single event can be described in a variety of ways due to the unreliability of multiple witnesses. The witnesses' unreliability and subjectivity are a result of the situational, social, and cultural differences. And so the very first film to do this was in 1950. And it was called Rashomon. That's where the term comes from, Rashomon effect. Because this director did it for the first time in this movie that they made. And people were like, wow, that's an amazing way to tell a story. One of the recent movies that I love that tells it in this way is called Wonder. If you've seen Wonder, you know what I'm talking about. Wonder is a story about a child who who's born with a defect where his face is deformed, frankly. And he grows up and he's had multiple surgeries and he grows up with this. And his family, who is used to it, sees it one way, but the world, when they see this little boy, see it differently. It's how this boy deals with the idea of having an obvious thing that makes people stare, an obvious thing that makes people see you differently. And one of the best lines in that movie, if you haven't seen it, rent it, go see it, trust me on this, it's an amazing movie. One of the best lines in the movie was this: he can't change the way he looks, but we can change the way we see. Phenomenal movie, great movie. There is clarity found in looking outside of our own perspective. And clarity, when it's at work, it requires focused energy on our part to do it. It requires thinking ahead on purpose. We have to plan ahead of time, like with our own willpower, to say, okay, I'm going to prevent myself from only seeing this situation from my own perspective, and I'm going to force myself almost to stop, pause, and consider what it could look like from someone else's perspective. So with all that in mind, let's dive into part one of our series about the younger brother. This week we're going to look at it from the younger brother's perspective. And I can relate because I'm the youngest of my family. People call it the baby of the family sometimes. That's me. I was the youngest. And I can relate with some of the troubles that we deal with being the younger of the family. And in Luke chapter 15, Luke is going to be the person who's going to be, basically the account of this situation. We're going to look at his in just a few minutes, but not quite yet. But if you remember Luke was a doctor. And because Luke was a doctor, that meant that he probably had an inquisitive mind. In other words, he looked at everything as let's investigate. Let's get to the end of the story. Let's figure out how to fix something. So he was a researcher. He was an investigator. And most importantly, he was very literate. Everyone in this time were not literate, reading and writing. So because of that, he took on the task of going through and interviewing people to find out the story of Jesus. And he interviewed Mary, the mother of Jesus. He interviewed John. He interviewed all the different people who had seen, people that were in towns and said, hey, I'm in town for a couple days. I want to meet people who saw this miracle. And he would talk to each person who saw a miracle to prove beyond shadow of a doubt that this wasn't one or two people's little trumped up idea, that there were whole villages who were still talking about what happened. And Luke wrote it all down to create an account of what took place. Now, Jesus, when he taught in public places. He loved to go to places where life happened, where activity was bustling and people were hustling and doing what they had to do for the day. So you find a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life. And the mixed crowd that Jesus was teaching the day that he taught the parable that we're going to look at, they were a mixed crowd, just like we have today. There were people who were into jazz music. There were people who were into R&B. There were people into 80s rock, right? I know about that. And there was even country music fans, okay? There was everybody represented in this crowd with all different tastes and ideas of what they found right and wrong. And they were all walking by, but as Jesus, as this guy, this teacher was teaching, something about the way he taught was different. And it caused people to stop what they were doing and kind of go, no, I know I got to be there in 5 minutes. Oh, I want to hear what this guy's got to say. And so a crowd began gathering as Jesus was teaching the story. And where we pick up in just a few minutes, we pick up the moment where Jesus just concludes a story about a lost sheep. You may have heard this one too. A parable of a lost sheep. He's just wrapping up that story, and he continues with this story we'll look at today. It's in Luke 15. We're going to start with verse 11, and I've got it here on the screen for you. Jesus continued. This is after he just talked about the lost sheep. He continued. There was a man who had 2 sons, to which people in the audience are relating. If you're a parent, you're like, I'm a parent. I've got kids. Or I was a kid, so I had parents. I mean, everybody can relate with the idea of what it's like in a family unit. The younger one said to his father, now I want to pause here for a second, because, talking to somebody is a very common thing, but this is a very patriarch society in this time. In other words, the 3 characters, father and 2 sons, older, 1 younger, that we're going to read about here, rank meant everything. Like if you were firstborn, that was very important. And second, third, and so on within a family. If we could just do a little exercise, this is going to be fun, I promise. If everybody could stand up for a second. Trust me, this is going to be a good time. You won't regret this. Now, if you are a middle child, not the firstborn, not the last, middle child, go ahead and sit down for me. Okay, Sonny, sit down back there. Oh,
I guess.
Rachel, okay. And so as that child, you're welcome because you never used to be first for anything. So you're welcome. This is a gift to you today. You got to be the first ones to sit down because you're probably like, yeah, it's always just kind of me. I'm kind of, the vanilla between everything else going on. I don't really stand out. I'm just kind of used to life going on. It's always this. So you guys understand the middle person's perspective. And for today's story, you're probably going to look at it and go, okay, because the middle child are unique, they can experience sometimes what the oldest one experiences and the youngest. So you're going to relate to parts of the story that everyone else may not have as easy of a time. The next ones to sit down is if you're the youngest of the family, Well, you're the ones that are going to relate a lot with the story today because today we're going to focus on the younger brother. And finally, if you're the oldest, the firstborn, in this society, you were the group that held all the cards. You were the group that were like, okay, I'm going to get the biggest portion of inheritance from the family. I've got the most responsibility, but also I've got people expect, but also look ahead to say like, oh, they're the oldest. They must be good. It was a place that you automatically had. You were going to be more likely to get a loan from, if you wanted to borrow a loan, you were more likely to get that because you're the firstborn. It gave you a certain status in society. So life was slanted in your favor. So you could be seated now too if you want to. So today we dive into the story, and in 2022, our society is not patriarch related anymore. If you go to the bank, they don't ask you, okay, which birth order were you? The bank doesn't care about that. They're not looking at that. If you're going to get a job, rarely do they ask us. Some areas of psychology will go into, that's interesting. This could tell us something about your personality. But it's very rare. In today's society, there's three things that we look at that typically give people an idea of when they first meet you, like, we're summing you up. And that's a person's race, a person's income level, and a person's level of beauty. That's what our society looks at. Those three things they look at typically. And when you first meet someone, believe it or not, whether you consciously realize it or not, you're summing a person up with your first impression based on one of those three things. You're examining a person closely to see that. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's the way it is in our society. We're not patriarchal in our society. We're a lot different in this way. And so race and income level, they vary region to region. I mean, people will think a little bit of that, but the thing that you catch the most, the thing that we look at the most, the thing that you'll notice when it comes to advertising, when it comes to who's on TV and who's not on TV, is beauty. Our society celebrates beauty. Our society puts beauty on a pedestal. Our society rates a lot of things based on where you fall on the level of beauty or not beauty. Could you be prom queen or prom king? Let's see where you fall in that level of beauty. We hate it. As a society, we kick against it because we're like, wait a minute, that shouldn't be that way. But it's the way that it goes. I mean, in our society, that's a lot to do with it. If you're a beautiful person, you have more opportunities. You get more breaks in life. And they've done studies to show this, and I'm not going to go into those studies, but it's a fact. They've shown studies that they'll take two individuals, one is extremely attractive and really stands out in the way, the other one is just average, and they send them into the same situation, and the way that the first one's treated is remarkably different than the second one. It's part of the way our society does it. Now, I've got a picture of a guy I want to look at. This is a guy that I know, and many of you might know him too. I'm going to spare his name to protect the innocent in this situation. But if you live in one of this region of Michigan, you're definitely going to know who this is. And I have to tell you, I've got a little bit of a guy crush, a little man crush on him. I'm a little bit jealous, because when I see him, I'm like, every time I see him, he is just everything is just, hair, he has just got it put together. Not like me. I got to really work hard at trying to look as good as I possibly can. But he just seems to, I think to myself, he probably just wakes up and the sunshine follows him around the house. I don't know, but I'm thinking, man, and if you think about it, look at what he's achieved in his life. Now, I am not trying to, I know him personally, so, hey, I got your back, man. If you're watching, I just want you to know I love you. But beauty does help in this society. It does help. But he's got amazing qualities besides that. I'm not by any means saying it's just because of that. But I think perhaps he may have experienced some advantages in life because of his outward appearance. But now we can look at other people. Let's look at this next shot. Now, you got a couple of guys here. You got a guy on the left and a guy on the right. The crazy thing is it's the exact same person. You might recognize him from Jurassic Park, the last couple Jurassic Park movies, Chris Pratt. But this is him on the left and on the right. And, this guy is going to get less noticed in an interview situation. Let's just be honest. This guy's going to get probably a callback if he's being interviewed for something like that. It's just people are more likely to do that. If you were interviewing for a position, which one would you interview first if you had to pick one based on the picture? I mean, we know what we'd probably say. That's not a great thing, but it's how our society is. And lastly, we'll look at this next picture. Which one of these guys are you going to look at, if you're looking for an investment banker? Now, you might say, oh, maybe I'd go with him because he looks intelligent. Well, but this guy looks like he's got discipline. It takes discipline to get these kinds of muscles. He works hard. So maybe I'd go with this guy because you put him in a suit and him in a suit, and this guy's going to really look good in a suit. And this guy's going to not look as good in the suit. So we find ourselves looking at people, and we make a lot of our judgments based on how a person looks. But not so in today's story. In today's story, in history, in this time of the world, it had to do with, didn't matter, yeah, trust me, if you're beautiful, it still got you ahead. I mean, don't get me wrong, but most importantly, what family were you born into and what birth order are you in? That was a big part of the conversation. So everybody listening to Jesus, everybody in this crowd thinks this way. They're thinking, oh, the youngest son, I've got him, I summed him up. I know what kind of person he is. Just, you said youngest son, I got it. Oldest son, I think I got a pretty good idea what he's like too. So people would already have pre-assumed these characters based on their birth order. So, I'm sure the younger brother is in a situation in this story where he would lay in the grass looking at the clouds and dream about the day that people would no longer ask him, oh, you're the youngest, or he would no longer live in the shadow of all of his brother's accomplishments. I'm sure he was sick and he was tired of hearing that, yes, his brother did that better. When he was in math, he got an A and I got an A-. When he was in sports, he scored 15 touchdowns. I scored 2. Yeah, okay. He was tired of hearing about the big brother always got more accomplished, which just seemed to be better and have better breaks. He knew his brother, when his father died, would take over the family estate. He'd be in charge because he was firstborn. Had nothing to do with how good his brother was at handling the family estate. And so he's saying to himself, I could do it better. I think I'm better at math than he is, but for some reason he got a better grade because he was the oldest. That's not fair. So he's beginning to say to himself, this isn't fair. Society is putting me in this peg, and I'm much more than just a younger brother. I've got skills, I've got abilities that are unnoticed. And so he begins chafing and getting frustrated. Every day he's growing up in this society. And I'm sure when he was working, all he could think about was vacation. I can't wait till I can go on vacation away from the boss. And for him, the boss was dad and the older brother. Because dad and older brother were always telling him, here, make sure you wake up at this time. You better go to sleep now because you got a big day tomorrow. He was tired of being told every day what to do by these two people who he considered the boss. He felt like the system was against him. And you can understand that as a younger, he's just like, I want to get a leg up, but I want to start my own company, but I'm not an oldest child, so what am I stuck with? What am I going to do? So he had enough. He had reached his breaking point where he's had enough of being thought of and treated by a certain way because of where he was in society, tired of being a second-class citizen. So here's what he decides to do. He had enough, and he says this to the father in verse 12. Here's what he says. Father, and it's hard to believe he says this because even in today's society, this is really weird. Give me my share of the estate. It's no different than today. No one ever asked that. And it would be considered very rude to ask that of a living father who hadn't died yet. Hey, could I have what I'm going to get when you die now instead of later? I'd really like to have that right now if you don't mind. It's inappropriate. It's disrespectful. It's rude. And everyone in the crowd would probably, when Jesus said that, they're all like, oh, not only is he down here because he's the youngest, but now he's got the audacity to ask dad for what is going to be his later on now. So everyone's already like, whoa, this guy's bad news. But as all of the youngest kids in the audience though, they're all going, well, hold on a minute. Before you judge him, walk a mile in our shoes, okay? We're tired of being unfairly treated. I mean, this is kind of justified in our eyes. Because life owes us, okay? We've been second-class citizens for generations and we're tired of it. We want to be known for who we are. We're human beings like everybody else and we deserve to be treated fairly. So they're probably thinking, well, maybe he's going to blaze a new trail. Maybe this guy's going to do something, stand up for all the younger ones in the world and say, we don't have to take it. We're not going to take it. I don't know. But he decides, I'm going to do something different now. I'm going to do what society may think is wrong, but society was wrong first. And since society was wrong first, what I'm doing is justified. So after asking the Father, what do you suppose the Father says? Jesus continues. So he divided his property between them. Now everyone in the crowd's going, record scratch, what? They're expecting it to be like, you rotten, ungrateful little youngest child. They're expecting Jesus to come up, but Jesus is like taking a turn no one expects. The Father's going to give him what he's asking for now? So now everyone's leading in because they're like, okay, wait. This isn't what I expected. Where is this story going? Because in these times, if a father had two sons, everyone knew there was just a general rule. The oldest would get 2/3 of the estate, and the youngest would get 1/3 of the estate. It was just a common, like, if you asked him, hey, how much do you get? Well, he's going to get 1/3. He's the youngest. They get 1/3. Oldest gets 2/3. So everyone knew how it's supposed to go. So they're all thinking, wait a minute. So now the father's going to have to sell off his land, because if he's got estates, that means it's land-based. He's going to have to sell some land now so he can cash it out and give it to the son. Like, this is their family property? He's going to do that just because the kid asked? But Jesus is telling the story, and Jesus says he divided the property among them. Now imagine how it felt for the youngest at this moment when dad says, okay, I'm going to divide the property between you guys. You're going to get your third. All right, you ready? Okay, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. And you're like, oh man, you're watching them just lay it out on the table. It's like, whoa, finally, I'm going to get what I've been waiting for. I really deserve this. I can finally do what I want to do. So I imagine that the character is starting to make plans at this point. And as we continue, he did. Here's what it says next. It says, not long after that, the younger son got together all he had. So he gathered up everything dad had given him, all of his possessions, cleaned out the clothes, his closet, grabbed his favorite CD player, whatever he was going to take with him, his headphones on there. This is back a long time ago, so they were Walkman back then. So he had everything he had. He set out for a distant, far-off country. It's like, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya. And he's like, I'm out of here. Phew. He figures this is going to fix them. I am sick of being treated second class. They're going to miss me when I'm gone. Who's going to feed the sheep? Sorry, I'm gone. I guess the older brother has to. So he's just thinking, he's probably walking out there going, strutting his stuff. It's like, I've got the money, woo, got the player going, playing his theme song, because now he has got the tiger by the tail. And he's excited. So he's heading out. He's going to live life to the fullest. And the thing about this to catch, though, is that the son is showing his whole family and his whole community that he wants what the father has more than the actual father. In other words, he's not so excited about being dad's son and having part of dad's family. Yeah, dad, that's nice and all, but can I just have what you're going to give me? Can I just have my benefits? Can I just take that? That's what he's telling everybody in his family. So when they watch him go, it's just mouths drop like, I can't believe he's doing this. But he's going to travel the world. He's excited. He's going to go to those exotic places. He's going to eat exotic foods. He's going to maybe meet a nice girl and settle down. I don't know. But like Frank Sinatra said it, I'm doing it my way. He's going to do it his way, man. And this is his chance to do what he wants to do. And if we pause the story just for a minute right here, as adults, we're all adults in this room. Possibly you're all adults watching online. we understand a little bit of how this feels because this is kind of how it works in the world today. If you're an adult, you really, especially in America, you get to do pretty much what you want, really. I mean, it's your right, it's your choice to live how you want to live within the means of whatever you have available to you, financially or whatever, but you get to decide what time you're going to wake up, or if you're going to go to work, not going to work, if you're going to have a job, no job at all, if you're going to retire now or retire later, you get to decide what you want to do. We really have free reign. God, our Father, if you're a Christian, this is what we believe, is that God is our Father, God, the creator of the universe, has given us as adults this gift of free choice, but also we get to do what we want to. We pick what we want. We're the captains of our own destinies or ships, really. God allows us that. And God could have done it differently. He could have given pastors like me parental powers. Kind of like, think of it like a parole officer. God could have made it where all of you have tethers, and I have tracker, and I know where you're going tomorrow night. I know where you were last night. I know what you did last summer. Like I've got, and I'm going to find out who's naughty and nice, and let's see, well here's, oh no, I saw where you were, or oh, wait a minute, call you up, hey, I noticed that you're almost at Swords Creek. You didn't get permission to leave the county. So what are you doing? The pastor could do all this stuff, keep everybody in line. Make sure that everybody does what's right. But God said, no, I'm not going to do it that way. Everyone has their own choice. Everyone has their own free will. Do what they want to do. And in this story, that's exactly what's occurring. This son has the opportunity to do whatever he wants, to do things his way. So, it continues with this. He went to the distant country and there squandered his wealth in wild living. He had fun. It doesn't say how long, but I imagine it was a while. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country. Okay, so this indicates he went to a whole different country, like, off to France or wherever, right? And he began to be in need. So now, mind you, he grew up in a home where, if he grew up in a place that was called an estate that had to be divided, that means he did all right. That means he was used to having whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it. Just had to follow within dad's boundaries and guidelines, which he didn't like. Now he's in a place where he's experiencing hunger, probably for the first time in his life, what it looks like to actually miss a meal because you can't afford to buy it. You ran out of money. Now he's in a tough spot now. Things got a little out of hand, you might say. He's probably saying to himself, man, I guess I paid too much for that Caesar's Pleasure Emporium top floor penthouse apartment that I rented. I shouldn't have done that. Man, I paid too much for that. I probably tipped my waitresses way too much. I was like, hey, the next round's on me. Woohoo! I probably did all that stuff way too much. And I don't remember as much as I probably should remember about what I've been doing the last couple of years here. So I got to figure this out. He does what we all do. This son now is like, okay, I got to figure this out. I'm in a bad position. I've ran out of money. I've blown it. I can't call dad. No way. That's the last thing that's going to happen. I got to figure this out. I got to get myself out of this mess because I can do this. I'm going to live life my way. And living in America today is a lot like that. In modern day America, people spend everything they have and go into debt because it's so easy to do. It's like, well, I'll just put off till tomorrow what I want to do today. I'll pay it back later. It's so easy to put yourself in a position like this where you one day realize, I don't have enough money to pay my bills this month. What in the world's going on? How did I get here? What in the world? And you got to think back and figure this out. And this son is in this place where he's got to figure out what he's going to do now. Because he tried. He gave it his best effort. But now he's like, I know what I could do. Now that I'm really hungry, I can get a job. So, verse 15 says, he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country. In other words, he got a job. It's like, hey, I've worked before. It's no big deal. I'm going to get a job here. I'm going to go out and I'm going to start saving up some money. Before I know it, I'll be right back to the party in life again. I'm just kind of a little setback right now. I'll be back on my feet in no time. I can do this. I got this under control. It's not over with yet. I'm going to get a job and work it out. I'm working every day. Now I'm going to work for somebody else. But hey, it could be worse. I could be feeding pigs after all. At least I'm not doing that. Well, then it continues. Who sent him to his fields to feed pigs? Oh, man. For a Jewish boy, this is the insult of all insults. They saw pigs as the lowliest animals, that only like the lowest of people worked alongside pigs, and this is the job he's given. So just when he thinks it couldn't get worse, it gets worse, because if anybody hears about this back home, if they find out that, oh, hey, how's Johnny doing? Did you hear? He's feeding pigs. No, yeah, no. I mean, it'll be the gossip of the town. And you don't want that getting back, so you're like, oh, I can't believe I'm in this position, but that's okay, I'm gonna figure this out. But man, he was so hungry, he longed to fill his stomach with the pods the pigs were eating. You gotta be pretty hungry to look at the pigs in that muddy pig pen and all that, to look at their food and go, man, that looks good. I've never been there, but I can say that you gotta be pretty bad off to look at the pig food and think it looks good. But no one gave him anything, which means, you know what this means? This means he was out of money. Paycheck doesn't, like, they don't pay you right away. You get paid after the work. He's working, he's starving, and he's like, I'm so hungry. I gotta wait how long for my first check? I hope they don't withhold the first, they withhold the first week. I hope not. Because what am I gonna do? Man, I wonder if that would be, sorry. You're like, I wanna try it. He's at the lowest point possible. Verse 17, when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? In other words, the guys that work for my dad, in those times, if you worked for the father on their big, basically ranch, you were given a place to live there as well. And you had a portion of food. So really, you were taken care of as well. Even they were taken care of, had food to spare. Like there's leftovers almost every night. And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, to get to this place, he had to hit rock bottom, because now I'm going to go crawling back to dad, who I walked out like this. Now I'm walking back like this. It had to be the worst. So he's imagining what he's going to say to his dad. He's imagining saying, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. This is what he concludes in his mind. He was at the end of his rope. The embarrassment of going back to daddy was horrific. He's rehearsing what he'll say, but mind you, he knew what rabbis taught. In this time, rabbis taught that if a person offended the family in this kind of a way, an apology wasn't enough. You couldn't just apologize. You had to make restitution. You had to do something to make it right. So he knew, there's no way I could ever just go up and say, Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I had a young life crisis, I guess. I just said some things I shouldn't have said. I'm so sorry. Come here, Dad. I'm so sorry. He knew he couldn't just do that. He knew if he went to his father was just going to be like, I don't know. Who are you? I don't know you. That's what he expected. So he's thinking, if I could just plead on Dad's mercy could you hire me and just let me be one of the work hands, please? Because he had no status within the family any longer. He had sold his birthright. He was no longer even a part of their family. So he's like, I'll become an apprentice to a tradesman, because that's what the hired servants were. They were men of trades. I'll become an apprentice. I'll learn the trade, and I'll slowly start saving the money so that when I go to Dad, I can pay him back some of what I've taken and done it wrong. So here's what it says. He had done this for a while, so we get to verse 20. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a ways off, it continues, a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son, to which all the fathers in the audience right now are going, say what? He's going to run to him? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe because he's going to pummel them. Just fire out of him. He's going to beat him to a pulp. Maybe that's what it is, because he's so angry with him. But no, he threw his arms around him and kissed him, where there was probably an audible gasp in the crowd. Because a kiss, when you kissed someone in that society, what that meant was that I am closer to you than just an acquaintance. You are like a blood brother to me. The kiss signified complete trust. A kiss signified there was no wrong between us. We are in right standing together. So how could the father just do this? The crowd had to be confused at this point, thinking, where is Jesus going with this story? Because we know what the kid deserves because of what he's done. but he's not getting what he deserves. So they're confused. But Jesus isn't done. It continues with verse 21. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. And this moment was a genuine, humbling moment for the son. He's heartbroken. He had the whole walk home, which if it's a different country, think about, we're talking weeks of travel. He had all that time to think about what he'd done wrong, to think about what it was probably like for his dad's perspective. He began to consider, like we often do, after we hit rock bottom, we begin to consider what it looked like or what it felt like for the other person in our story. So now he's with his dad, and his dad says this to him. Verse 22, but the father said to his servants, almost cutting him off, like, Dad, I'm so sorry. Oh, servants, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, which means he was barefoot. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. So the best robe, that was his own robe, by the way. The best robe in any household was always the father, the patriarch of the family. So he's saying, go to my closet and get my finest robe and bring it here. I'm putting it on him right now. Because he's probably dirty and smelly and traveling, had nothing. Put it on him now. And get the ring that signifies that you are a part of this family. You could take that ring to a store and say, oh, hey, I need 3 bags of flour. Okay. Oh, yes, sir, we'll put it on your account, sir, if you had the ring. So the ring signified he had status again, as if nothing had happened at all. So they're beyond belief. Then he says this, let's have a feast and celebrate. You can almost, everybody, we celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and found. So they began to celebrate. Cool the King had to be invited. Cool the King invited. Woo! Everybody's in the crowd. The whole town is gathered together. It's like, we're going to have a party. We're going to celebrate, man. This is great. My son is back. Now, Jesus is telling this, and the whole crowd is probably gasping because no one does that. No one does that. Who would do that? Life is good to be forgiven. The son experienced complete forgiveness. What he didn't expect, what he didn't ask for. Now, the son, who was really sincere in doing wrong, is given the status like he had before. He is now a Hefferheimer once again. He's a part of the family. He gave up his last name before, but now he's back to that name. He's got the status. Man, it's like nothing ever happened. The Father completely forgave him. This parable is an explanation of how our loving Father in heaven looks at us. We can make the biggest mistakes and blow it big time to a place where we're all convinced there's no way God will take me back. There's no way I could ever become a Christian because, and we've all got something after because. Something that we're ashamed of. Something that happened maybe a long time ago, maybe last week, but something that we say, I wish I could erase that from my memory. And God, this story shows that God says, he interrupts you. Shh, puts his fingers on your mouth. Quiet, no. You're my son again. You're my daughter again. Bring the robe. Put the ring on the finger. You have right status with me. No matter how far you've gone, no matter how distant you are, God welcomes us with open arms back home. So today, as we get ready to close our service, I want to ask you this. Do you have some unfinished business with your Father? Maybe you've just not thought about it for a long time. Maybe today's message, you're kind of thinking about it a little bit, going, I'm not sure. Is he okay with me? Are you okay with that? And I want to invite you during this next song that we're going to do in a few minutes to think about that and to have a prayer time between you and God. Because we can do that in this situation. We can do that whether you're watching online. You can, while the song is playing, just talk to God and just say, you know what, God, here's where I am. And you'll experience what we're talking about, where the loving Father says, it's okay. You're my child. you have right standing in my eyes, and you will be forgiven. But ask for forgiveness, and you can be forgiven. And if you would like prayer today, I want to invite you to come forward. And I'll be up here. I'll be happy to pray with you. It'll be my honor and my privilege to pray with you. If you're watching online and you'd like prayer, you can send us a message to info@silvercreek.church. I get those messages personally, and I would love to pray with you and to talk with you. If you want to meet in person, we can meet in person. So whether you're here now or whether you're online, this is your opportunity in just a moment to make things right. Our Father wants to hear from you in heaven. Now, for the younger brother, this story is finished with a happily ever after ending, and all of us can relate to that. But the parable isn't finished yet. Come back next week to hear the story from the older brother's perspective. New details will emerge, and a surprising twist will take place in next week's message. So for now, would you all stand with me as we finish off this closing song? And I invite you, after the song, during the song, make an appointment. I don't care. I would love to pray with you and just be there for you as well. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you for being the kind of Father that treats us more than we deserve, that gives us forgiveness beyond what we would ever expect or think was possible. Thank you for holding your loving arms out for us, God, and saying, no, it's okay. Come on, just ask me for forgiveness. It's okay. I thank you for being that kind of Father that we can all look up to. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You've been God for a long time. You're the final word, you're the finish line. And everything's gonna be alright. 'Cause you've been God for a long time. You've been God for a long time. You're the final word, you're the finish line. Yeah. Everything's gonna be alright. Yeah, 'cause you've been God for a long time. So I will trust you in the valley. I will bless you in the peace. When I'm standing in your victory, when I'm on my knees, and I will praise you with the rising and the setting sun. Oh, you're gonna catch me singing when the springtime comes. Oh, you're gonna catch me singing when the springtime comes. Oh, you're gonna catch me singing when the springtime comes. Thank you guys for being with us this morning. Have a good one.